welcome to the second full-length feature edition of the Default Podcast. My name is Keir Whitaker, and as always, joined by my good friend, Mr. Kieran Masterton. Hey, Kieran.
Morning. How are you?
I'm very well. I'm pretty sure I've done ad verbatim for the previous introduction. I'll try and mix it up for the next one, but you are my good friend, and you are Kieran Masterton. Whereas I have to say on my iPhone, it's not a lie. But whenever I call you using Siri, I have to say Mosterton. That's the only way
that's
the Siri understands.
Siri's pronunciation.
Yeah, you're not a well man, unfortunately. You've caught some kind of.
I've got some kind of chest-based
malady.
Yes.
Yeah,
so I'll do my best not to cough over the Samsung microphone.
But not one to shy away from your duty. You're here behind the mic once again for the second episode. Thank you to everyone, of course, who has listened to the pre-edition and the full-length feature edition episode 1. We're tipping a couple of hundred downloads for those, which is fantastic.
Which is impressive. Yeah,
we're very impressed.
We're very pleased with it.
We're shying away from those, aspirations of 1 million downloads. Let's get to 300. This is great. But and in other news, the YouTube subscriber count is rocketing. I think we're up to 26 now.
25 subscribers. Yeah, which is great.
I think it's 26. I'm going to take 26.
Is it?
I had a look this morning, but so 74 to go before we can ask the powers that be at YouTube for our own URL. So
yes,
if you are enjoying,
cap in hand and say, can we have /defaulthq, please?
Yes. I mean that would be a day worth celebrating. But in other video news, by the time this hits the airwaves, video 2 will be out. What can people expect?
Video 2 is the first part in our multi-part series on 2020-01, which is the new API from Shopify, or at least the new version of the API from Shopify, which came out at the beginning of January. And this particular episode is about product media, which, as I quickly learned when I started to make the video, is a much meatier subject and a beefier subject than perhaps I'd given it credit for. There's a lot to learn about product media. So basically in this video, I walk through what product media types are and why they've introduced them, all the way through to admin features, themes, and then a little bit of admin API action with uploading a video via the admin API.
Yes, this one comes with added screencast as well.
It does, yeah. My first time trying to record 4K screencast was interesting.
Interesting, yeah. And you use a 3D render of your own car as well.
I wish. No, yes, the McLaren 650S.
Yeah, I would love to see you trying to get in one of those with your height. But
getting in wouldn't be the issue. Getting out wouldn't happen. I need a fire crew to get me out.
Just take off the sunroof and take out the sunroof and off you go. But that will be live on YouTube, and you can find that obviously on YouTube default, but also if you go to defaulthq.com/video, you will be redirected. In other sort of media news, we are now available on the majority of podcast networks. Thanks to the ease of use of Simplecast, we have submitted our URL, and you can find us now on Google, Spotify, and especially for Michael Shannon, Pocket Casts. I hope he's happy.
Also, obviously, Lee from Blue Bolt as well.
He was for Spotify. Yes. So, the subscriber count is hopefully going to increase as a result of this submission, but there we go. Anyway, we did hope to record this yesterday, which was the 4th of February 2020.
Yes.
A big day. Chrome 80 came out, and this has had some implications for the Shopify developer community. Do you want to run us through quickly the implications of Chrome 80 and what people can need to know and what they should do about it if they're in the app space?
Yeah, sure. I mean, this is probably something that most app developers will be aware of, but we thought it probably worth talking about just in case it's passed you by. Shopify has had some comms about this, but effectively Chrome 80 introduces a bunch of different new keeping the web safer features from Google. So Google's obviously got this drive announced sort of late 2019 that they're trying to, make things safer for us online. And one of these is to change the behavior of cross-site and third-party cookies, which has a relatively large impact on embedded apps, because embedded apps are obviously considered a third-party context. If you think about the Shopify admin as a first-party context, and then the app that is embedded in the iframe is a third-party context, and so to Chrome, you're effectively using a third-party cookie. And the new policy is to deny that behavior as opposed to auto allowing it, which obviously makes sense from a security point of view, but it does cause a bit of problems for not just Shopify, but anybody who's doing this kind of embedded app behavior, where the app lives on a different domain to the rest of the site. And the solution to this that Google have proposed and have introduced is a new cookie parameter called SameSite, which should be set to none. And that has to be used in combination with a secure param on the cookie as well. So that's basically the kind of the top level, overview of it. But yeah, there are a bunch of resources kicking about for Shopify specific stuff as well.
And what could people expect if they don't sign the cookie in this way and they don't get on the Chrome 80 bandwagon? What happens to those embedded apps?
So that effectively they'll receive an error from Shopify. So you'll get a red bar error at the bottom, and it'll say that you're I can't remember what the actual error message says. It says something like policy denied, or so there's some messaging to that effect that appears. And so basically anybody who's on Chrome 80 will start to not be able to use your application.
Right. So it will actually deny, the app will stop working effectively.
It will, yeah. So this is not, I should say, this is not just like it's not a new thing. Like there has been a whole series of these kind of not quite so apocalyptic, type in terms of like it breaking completely, but there's been this whole series of events where Chrome has updated or Safari has updated, and that has broken App Bridge or has broken cookies or whatever. So this is a sort of ongoing saga, if you like, where in an effort to make things more secure, the browsers are breaking how embedded apps currently work.
Okay, so upshot is
make sure you're sending same site.
Yeah.
If you're using the Shopify app gem or the node module, then you're probably in a good place as long as you just upgrade to those, because there have been PRs merged that fix this. If you're just using the Shopify API gem and you're sort of rolling your own cookies and all that stuff, then you probably need to look at this more closely and maybe look at how they've implemented it in the Shopify app gem to see how you should do the same thing in your app. And there's also some issues with backward compatibility with this as well. Like, so basically Chrome have introduced a new feature, but they've also in turn broken some of their old browsers. So from Chrome 50 to 66, apparently same site will literally be rejected. So if you're on too old a version of the browser, it'll also break now with this fix.
Right.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay.
But the good news is that Shane from the developer tools and education team at Shopify has written a guide. So there is a breakdown on the Shopify site that tells you what you need to know about same site and how it impacts app developers.
In other news, there are some changes coming to the Shopify Plus checkout that we need to be aware of. I think the key date there is February 20th, Kieran. What can you tell us?
So we're not going to spend too much time on this one because there's a lot of stuff going on there. But essentially, Shopify have been sending out emails pretty regularly since just before Christmas to anybody who has checkout.liquid enabled on their store.
And for those people who maybe, sorry to interrupt, for those people who aren't on Plus, they may not, especially if you're relatively new to the ecosystem, what is checkout.liquid?
So checkout.liquid is the checkout template in the theme. This is enabled on Plus stores by request. So if you want to be able to customize mainly the kind of look and feel of the checkout, you can't really customize the actual fields itself too much unless you do sort of client-side changes to those fields.
Right.
But it effectively gives you access to the template for the checkout, which is obviously useful if you want to add tracking code or some copy or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we used to have
So
access to that years ago, and then I think it became a Plus only feature
yes, yeah.
when Plus launched. Yeah. So what are the changes that people need to be aware of?
So to give you an idea of what happens here, normally on about a 90-day rolling cadence, um, Shopify update the checkout. It doesn't always happen that often, but that's how often they say it can happen. This is sort of allows the devs internally at Shopify to be able to introduce new stuff and have a kind of change control process for all the Plus stores that are using it. So a bit like versioning, an email goes out saying the following things have changed. Please go to your shop and merge those changes with your existing checkout.liquid. But obviously, the important thing here, the critical thing, is that if anybody's got apps who interact with those checkout.liquid files, or if anybody's added custom code to it, the changes that Shopify make, especially if your edits to the checkout.liquid are DOM dependent, meaning like you're targeting specific classes or something, the changes that Shopify make can break what you've written.
Right.
So you don't want to just allow Shopify to auto upgrade that checkout.liquid on February 20th. You need to check if this is working on your staging or your development site. So quick rundown of what's changed, and this is an abridged version. There's a lot changed in this version. We've got new discounting liquid variables introduced. We've got Arrive for desktop, which is their sort of end-to-end delivery app that Shopify have.
Explain that one a little bit more for people
So
who may not have heard of that.
Arrive was an iOS app, and it was basically a way for merchants to communicate every step of the way what's happening with the shipment of your parcel, basically.
Okay.
So it's like I think it might have been an acquisition. I'm not sure, or
So
maybe it was like a.
is that going to come in the
Sorry,
form of a desktop notification, or how? What does
I
it?
don't know, to be honest with you. I think it's they're obviously pushing for this to be like a desktop feature of Shopify, and I imagine
Hmm.
that will be added to the customer account area, perhaps
Okay.
under orders. I don't know, but obviously
Okay.
that's been introduced on the checkout. And then we've got order editing, which is obviously a massive change with impact. It touches everything. So if you edit an order, obviously you then need to be able to pay for any additions to that order, and so the changes they've made are going to account for that.
Oh, that makes sense. Yeah.
Bunch of accessibility CSS copy changes, payment method display changes, saved customer address changes, 3D secure changes. There's tons of stuff here. So like it just goes on and on and on. So I think if you are doing anything with a custom checkout, I would encourage you not to just go, oh yeah, they'll have changed some copy. Don't worry about it. This is a big change compared to previous changes.
Okay. And what is 3D secure for? I'm sure everyone's aware of it, but just in case.
Yeah, so basically 3D Secure is a sort of secondary authentication process for credit card payments. So effectively, this is obviously become a big issue in Europe recently, where this has become a requirement.
Hmm.
Or I should say, it depends on what country you're in Europe. There's different rules in different countries, but I think the UK has 2 years to comply. Goodness knows what's happening now, of course, with Brexit, but basically, the situation is that 3D Secure allows you to authenticate via a secondary device, like getting a text message, for example,
Got you.
or the other option is that they have some kind of password stored with your bank that you then put in the third, second, and seventh character of,
Yeah.
basically a second line of defense. So that has obviously become a requirement in Europe, and Shopify have made changes to the checkout to accommodate that.
Okay. So upshot being that you can test all this in staging. Just get ready.
Yep.
This change will happen automatically to those Plus stores on February 20th, and
February 20th is kind of the cutoff date. Yeah, you can merge it manually yourself before that. And
right.
Shopify give you a process to do that. So you basically go to your admin and you get a alert in the admin which says you need to merge your changes, and it will go in and it will try and do that automatically for you. But obviously, you want to do that on a staging or a development store, not on production.
And I'm always intrigued when any sort of software company publishes a date for a change. I mean, is it, do they ever specify a time, or is it literally just some point on that day when someone remembers it gets shipped?
I don't know. I know that I know they have a specified time with the API releases. I'm trying to remember what time it is now. I think it might be, and I think it might be 1 p.m. EST is the
Okay,
time that the API version ships. That might be completely wrong, but
which is
they do have a
good for
specific time
us.
for that.
It's good for us because we could then
Yes.
like 4 hours to fix stuff when we remember the date, or
Yeah.
5 hours depending
Um,
on the season. But yeah, cool.
but um, but yeah, I don't know with the checkout if there's a specific time, but I would I would urge you to do it before the day
Yeah,
itself.
so February 19th, be sure to be ready. And has there any comms on this other than email? Is there anything on the Shopify docs, or would
Yeah,
you?
so the email links to a doc that I believe is not publicly available because it's only designed for people who've got checkout.liquid.
Okay,
Um, but it's obviously accessible. It's just not linked from elsewhere in the documentation.
okay. So go check your emails if you think you're going to be affected with the Plus checkout changes. And
Yeah.
again, we'll keep an eye on those and see how that goes down and see what changes are forthcoming. We'll keep you updated. But
Uh-huh.
we wanted to talk a little bit today. Well, I thought it would be a good idea to sort of delve into your sort of first 12, 14 months at Shopify, where you acted as a
Yeah.
Shopify Plus launch engineer, which is an interesting role. And I think certainly when I found out you were joining Shopify as a launch engineer, I thought I knew what it was, and then you actually started in the role and realized it encompassed a lot more. And yeah, I
Yeah.
think it's one of those terms that is talked about. So and so is a launch engineer, but I think it'd be really interesting to sort of quiz you a little bit and unpick
Sure.
um, what that means and how people in agency land can benefit from working with a launch engineer, and how a merchant can benefit from working with a launch engineer, and how all those kind of pieces fit together. So
Yeah.
why don't you just start, I guess, by I mean, it's fair to say, was it 12 or 14 months you were a Plus launch engineer for
About
EMEA?
yeah, that's about right. So it's about 14 months. Yeah, that's right.
Mm. So what was a typical day? What was kind of your remit, and how did you work?
Yeah, so it's a really interesting one. Launch engineers are all very different, which I guess we'll get onto in a minute, but um, their days are kind of similar. So effectively, launch engineers have a block of merchants that are assigned to them. They act as a consultant that is a specialist in Plus, and specifically a specialist in migrating to the Shopify platform, or launching on the Shopify platform, I should say. So it's not always migrations; it can be new merchants. Um, they are assigned to those merchants during the sales process or just after the sales process, and again, this is Plus only. So this is specific to Plus. So there was obviously a sales process at the beginning, and then though the launch engineer carries the merchant through from signing the contract all the way through to launching on the store when you hand over to a merchant success manager.
Right. Okay.
And the backgrounds of those launch engineers can vary wildly. I should say that so you asked about day to day. So day to day, merchants can book time with the launch engineer. Typically, pretty much anyone from the merchants team would do that. So, in sort of Calendly fashion, they'll just book
Right.
book a call with you, and they'll give you a bit of a description about what their issue is, or what they're trying to find out or solve. A lot of the role is problem solving, so it's taking in business requirements from the merchant and then finding technical or non-technical solutions to those problems. Um, so yeah, I think, but I was just going to say that the background vary wildly for launch engineers. There wasn't really a typical launch engineer, and I think that's why there's quite a lot of sort of not confusion, but kind of questions around what exactly does a launch engineer do for you, because their role is so broad and because their background is so varied. So you might have someone who's got a very, very highly technical background, who's been a developer for a long time, or you might have someone who's been in UX, or maybe they've worked at a merchant previously
Mm.
who's been a Plus merchant. And I know now they have launch engineers who are project managers at Plus agencies working with them. So it does come the backgrounds do come from all over the place, and it's really that very broad experience of the team working together that helps them solve problems for merchants.
So I think this is interesting because effectively there appears now to be with the launch engineer as somewhat of a triangle. You have the merchant at the top, and then you have like
Uh-huh.
the plus launch engineer on one side of the triangle, and then potentially a agency working in that mix as well. So
Correct.
how does that all gel together, and how, I guess, do you or did you kind of put that agency at ease that you weren't there to kind of direct them, but to aid them? How does that sort of dynamic work?
Yeah, I think it was a little bit easier for me in a sense because my background's technical to do that. I think it was relatively easy for me to sort of be like, I'm not here to monitor you as as an agency and try and make sure you're doing the right things. I was more there as a technical resource to solve problems or to potentially ask the right question that maybe they haven't asked yet. Because that's one of the areas that I think launch engineers can be really helpful, is that they typically, because of the role that they have and having launched so many merchants, they typically know all the gotchas and limitations and things that are going to trip up potentially partners, at the last minute right before launch. So I
Mm.
think that's where they can be really useful to agencies. Um, but I think it was just really being collaborative and like trying to, having come from from an agency background myself, like it was pretty easy to have empathy for them and to be able to understand that they've got their commercial head on, i.e., this is going to cost us a lot of money. We've quoted a specific amount of hours, and now this is running wildly out of control. And I also know that they want to deliver a great product for the merchant. So
Mm.
yeah, I think it's just about sort of trying to put them at ease and saying, I'm not a Shopify spy or something in the camp. I'm here to like be part of the team. And
And would
that's
you,
all about how you introduce yourself and set expectations, right? Like you have to
of
say,
course, yeah.
I'm here to join the team, and for you, and you should call me if you need me.
I was going to say, did you have conversations, obviously, with those agencies outside of the conversations you had with the merchant on the call as well? Would you be a resource
Yes,
for the agency?
yes, yeah, definitely. So I think it's important to point out that from a internal Shopify perspective, a launch engineer is supposed to focus on the merchant as the primary point of contact, but they always have the partner as a secondary point of contact.
Mm.
Um, and the partners, being realistic, the partner probably in many cases becomes the primary point of contact because the kind of problems that you're solving are normally problems that it's much easier for you to have a conversation with the agency about than it is to have with the merchant. The agency has tons of Shopify context already, and they are able to you're able to shortcut conversations, right? If you're talking about how to solve a problem, they are going to instantly know what meta fields are, for example, whereas a merchant is going to not understand that and need you to give them context on it.
Right, right. So, I mean, just sort of without obviously naming names, but what were some of the sort of bigger challenges that? I'm just looking for some scenarios, I guess. Like, obviously,
Yeah.
I know from chatting to you that some, many went smoothly. Some had some very interesting technical challenges. What kind of things would you have weighed in on and collaborated with the agency, I guess, to solve? What kind of can you give any examples for people out there?
Yeah, so I think typical things are merchants with a lot of business complexity. So people typically think of Shopify as being a platform for people who are maybe selling, 5, 10, 15, 50 type, that those sort of number of products, or
Right,
selling products that are quite simple, i.e. t-shirts or handbags or, whatever. But very often on Plus, the reason for coming to Plus is that there's a lot of complexity um, in the business. And that might be that you are a bathroom company and you have maybe, I don't know, pushing a million SKUs,
right,
and every bathroom that a customer buys is a bundle of those SKUs. and different products have different compatibilities, and different products have different discounts if they're bought together, and that quickly introduces a lot of complexity to what you're trying to produce on Shopify, because Shopify naturally isn't built to do those things. But there's often a very good reason for that merchant coming to Plus. For example, they have been on another platform and they've had security problems, or they've been on another platform and they've had scale problems when they've done a sale. So it's about finding the balance between the merchant's business requirements and Shopify, and how far you can push Shopify and how far you can flex it and solve things with private apps or with custom apps. So some examples would be, they've got 10 Shopify stores and they've got one ERP. The ERP needs things in a certain format. There doesn't appear to be an off-the-shelf connector for that ERP, or certainly not an off-the-shelf connector that will connect with 10 stores. So how do we spec this? And that would be where the launch engineer could jump in and give specific Shopify-related input. Or another example was that a merchant wants to do effectively pre-sales, but what they want to do is they want to send out a bundle of goods. They want to store the credit card, but they don't want to charge the customer until they've decided what they want from that bundle of goods.
Right.
So you see this quite often with maybe fashion or like movie memorabilia. They'll send out a big box of cool stuff. The idea being that the person receives them, tries on the clothes, or looks at the movie memorabilia and goes, wow, I want all of this, tick, 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 I'm going to buy it all, I'll keep it. Or they send it back. So these are the kind of things that Shopify doesn't do out of the box without a lot of input from third-party apps, etc. And I think that's probably where launch engineers come into their own. But also with stuff like data migration, because they've done so many migrations, they'll instantly know if you run into a problem, what that problem is and how to solve it,
I guess you also, we use the C word again, the context. You got that broad range of, especially once you've been in the role for some time,
yes,
of things that have happened out there, and that you can bring to the table that maybe the agency, for whatever reason, they haven't worked on that particular kind of problem. So you can bring up and you can put them at ease and say, well, we've done it before. I'll take it off the call. I'll explain how we've helped other agencies do similar things. So definitely,
that's right.
And how often would you have engaged with the agency, say during the course of that pre-launch phase?
It really depends on the agency themselves, but I think that many agencies would join the weekly call or the fortnightly call that I would do with merchants, and then based on that call, there might be a follow-up just with the agency.
Right.
So they might say, let me pick your brains about that or whatever, which doesn't necessarily have to happen on the call with the merchant who doesn't want to know about Shopify redirect limits or something.
Which, is a good topic to get into.
It's a fascinating topic. There's a video in the works.
So let's round this out just by thinking about, what happens on launch day. What would the launch engineer happen on launch day, and how do you hand off to that merchant success manager? And I guess we can talk about merchant success later, but what does that kind of last phase of the project for launch engineer look like? And again, what input do they have with the agency during that phase?
Yeah, I think that this is very dependent on the agency and the merchant and the launch engineer involved, which is probably a bit of an annoying answer, but I've had merchants who very much would like me to be on the phone during the launch, i.e., when the launch is effectively changing DNS, right?
Which is pretty scary, let's be honest.
which is a scary moment, yeah. So especially when you've got a large volume of traffic, right? And your sales are counted in thousands of dollars per minute or whatever, not in thousands of dollars per month. So I think, yeah, it was very much a conversation that you have. Maybe, as the project moves on, maybe towards sort of the third, the latter third of the project, you have a conversation around what you want to happen on launch day. And I think um, larger merchants who either had an in-house team or had a big agency on board probably don't need you hanging around on a Google Hangout on the day. Normally, you've solved the problems you need to solve for them before that. Having said that, with things like DNS propagation, certificate generation, your Shopify system for cert generation is completely automated. So pretty much within about 4 minutes, you should have a cert, whatever happens. But occasionally, those things don't happen for whatever reason. If there's sort of ghost in the machine, or DNS is being funny. So sometimes it's useful to at least have the launch engineer on standby. And that's what I used to say. Like, I'll be on standby. I'll put it in my calendar. I'll make sure there's nothing else happening. I won't be on another call. You ping me a message if something's not happening. And that would normally be a collaboration with the agency.
Right.
And the agency could be like, hey, Kieran, we're getting an SSL error. Can you look at it? And that's where launch engineers can do stuff like force through, manual provisioning of that SSL.
And you could do that yourself. You didn't have to wait kind of on an ops team.
Yes. Yeah. No. So launch engineers have access to do that stuff. So it is a useful resource. And I think that's also the other piece that's worth mentioning is that launch engineers should 100% be like your advocate, both for a merchant and as a partner internally at Shopify. So obviously they have, again, the C word, context on the project. They understand what's happening. There were cases where, Shopify had a standard behavior, and I would then go to bat for the merchant or partner internally and explain why this is a specific scenario and why it's important for this to be changed, and that would happen. So I think building relationships with that launch team is really valuable. And if anything, while I was there, I would like to have seen way more collaboration between launch engineers and agencies, and not have merchants having a call with a launch engineer, then a call with the agency, and then relaying, acting like a man in the middle, as it were.
Was there ever any sort of confusion or pushback about the role of the launch engineer from an agency working on the build, or?
I think so. I think that there's confusion in general about the role to a certain degree, primarily because each launch engine is so different. So you might have asked me a question, then asked one of my colleagues a question, and my colleague might have known the answer and I wouldn't. I think there's not that consistency, and unlike a guru role, for example, or even a plus support specialist or a partner specialist, I don't think there's going to be that level of consistency, because everybody's, first of all, their backgrounds are so different. And secondly, their experience in terms of launches is so different. Yeah. I think you need to think of them more as talking to another agency in terms of where their knowledge comes from, and that sort of tribal knowledge, as opposed to being thought of as, oracles with all the information in front of them at their fingertips. Because launch engineers, probably I'd say 70% of the time, will say, let me get back to you on that, and it'll be I was going to say going back to the team.
Would you find yourself being assigned certain merchants based on your skill set and background, or was it just literally
yeah. And I think that is something that they want to do more of as well. So I think it's this merchant's going to be highly technical, for example, or this merchant has a lot of complexity. And I think that solutions engineering, who are the step before that, who are step before launch engineering, so solutions hand over to launch. Right. Solutions are involved at the sales stage. I think solutions engineering are making a big effort to be like, this is going to be a highly technical account, for example. So someone with a technical background needs to take this. That was certainly something they were working on when I left, but obviously my information is aging rapidly.
Aren't we all? Yeah. I think that's really interesting, because I the reason I think we wanted to talk about this is that we know from speaking to agencies out there, and your own experience. I think there was some sort of not confusion is perhaps the wrong word, but sort of uncertainty over what the role entailed and how it aided and not impeded the
Yeah,
agency
I think
involved.
being totally honest, I think that based on your experience with launch engineers or lack thereof, it can either come across this person's sort of just a hindrance, or this person sort of isn't on board with what we're saying if we're an agency, if you know what I mean. They're a confusing factor in the mix for the merchant, but I think it's better to think of them as an ally and a sort of someone who's potentially sort of on your side internally at Shopify, than thinking of them as somebody who's like, muddying the waters or confusing things for the merchant.
Yeah, exactly. And I see that you've lined up a launch architect for an
Yes.
interview in a future episode. So
Yeah, so Josh, who is a launch architect in APAC, Australia, is has kindly agreed to come on an episode of the podcast, hopefully in the next couple of weeks. Launch architects are senior launch engineers, basically.
it's a lot of nomenclature. We need to have a
Well,
directory of nomenclature.
yeah. I think maybe we should have that in general for Shopify. Like,
Yeah.
that would be a good resource. But yeah, so yeah, launch architects are typically senior launch engineers who are technical.
Oh my.
If that helps. Yes, because there is a thing called a senior launch engineer, who are typically just people who have a huge amount of experience with launching shops on Shopify. So, but don't have a developer background.
Okay, well, we look forward to. I think you're going to be steering that conversation with Josh, our friend down under, in the next few weeks, and maybe you
Yes.
can, if nothing else, get to the bottom of this naming convention for job titles.
Yeah, that'll
And,
be good. Yeah,
that's probably a
if we
whole
can
other.
create some sort of flow diagram
Yeah, I'll
or
leave that one to you.
graph.
Yeah,
Yeah,
flame graph. Come on.
not
No,
not a flame graph.
yeah, exactly. Talking of interviews, we will be chatting. We have quite a few booked in with people
Yes.
from our ecosystem in the next few weeks, from varying backgrounds, agency and app developers. And
Do you
yeah,
want
we
to tease the
welcome.
first one, Keir, or not?
No, because I mean, I don't. I mean, that's sort of suggesting that we will put them out in order of recording, of course.
Oh, okay, fair.
But yes, a well-known, well-respected individual is our first recording this week. Who will, no doubt, he shares a name with a very famous actor, so we could tease that.
Fair.
Yes, it is.
Yes.
It is Michael Caine. But anyway, we will be launching some interviews over the next few weeks that we will intersplice with our own ramblings as well. So we look forward to that. And if you've got something to say or a hot topic you would like to discuss and chat about on a podcast, please do hit us up. I think have we set up the email yet? Have we got email? Hello?
We do. Yes.
What is it?
podcast@
defaulthq.com, which wings its way to our wonderful, gorgeous account. And
yes,
we will endeavour to reply. But if you've got something to say and you like talking, please do get in touch. We just wanted to round out with some a shameless plug for something that we're both involved in, which is coming up in May, the day after Unite, which is Debrief. And I think you'd had a couple of pings from friends and colleagues wondering why you're involved and is it part of Default now? And so we just thought we'd quickly go over that. So for those who aren't aware of Debrief, this was a project that I started with our good friend Kat Hunter, who was also my colleague at Shopify and previous companies over the years, also based in Bath in the southwest like me, that we started last year. And we thought, having both worked at Shopify and then moving over to working in the ecosystem, the space, however you prefer to describe it, we thought it'd be really interesting to discuss the big announcements. What happened at Unite? What are the technical implications? What are the business implications? What does it mean for agencies and app companies working in the Shopify ecosystem moving forward? And we took a punt, as it were, and went to Shopify's backyard and hosted a debrief session, called it Debrief.
Yes.
and had around 150 people. And the day after Unite last year, and the generous support. It's funded by the community in a sense. We call it patronage. Literally, that it wouldn't be possible without the support of the companies. We had 16 patrons last year. We're up to 14 out of 16 this year, and essentially it was a day of panels and discussion and the opportunity to chat with people over great coffee and food, and it went really, really well. And we decided that it kind of really fitted the brief of what we're trying to do with Default. We sort of pitch ourselves as creating products and services for people working at the forefront of the Shopify ecosystem, which is rather wordy, but it's kind of the ambition we have. And Debrief kind of felt like it was, exactly that. It was an in real life manifestation of some of the things that we're doing online through the podcast and through the videos and stuff like that. So whether it was chicken and egg and chicken, debrief, default, debrief, it doesn't really matter. But the downside is that now you're involved. I jest, of course.
Always a downside.
Always a downside. But that was also kind of forcing the fact that forcing function in a sense, because Kat is on maternity leave, so she won't be with us this year. So I need someone to collaborate fully on this. So you'll helping out. You'll be helping out with a lot of the sort of content and the themes of the event as well. So we're super excited for that. We think it's a really nice part of what we're trying to do with Default as a company. We've already.
Do you want to talk a little bit about? Sorry, go
on. No, go on.
I was going to say, do you want to talk a little bit about the format that was last year?
Yeah. So format was basically, we had, I think, 5 panels that focused on themes and apps and the ecosystem, and sort of rounded out with one that was focused on like what we could expect in the next year. This year, I think we'll do something very, very similar, but I'm also very keen to involve people who aren't on panels as much as possible. So I think we'll be doing, definitely encouraging people to contribute. You'll be there with your video, so there's a lot of time for.
I'll be shooting video,
vox pops and your opportunities for people to make some predictions or feedback on things that were announced at Unite. But yeah, it was all the panels were chaired by well-respected industry people. We're sort of curating the panels this year to include more a broader range of backgrounds, gender, diversity, all of that kind of stuff, geography as well. I think there's some really interesting things happening in other parts of the world that we might not look to straight away. Certainly in Asia and APAC.
Agreed. Yeah.
I think it will be good to get some perspective on e-commerce and how Shopify is helping people in those parts of the world. So yeah, lots to mull over, lots to think about. We are kind of at the mercy of what gets announced at Shopify Unite, but not so much. I think there's plenty of opportunity for people to get together. I think it differs slightly in as much as there are lots and lots of social events around Unite, which is fantastic, but we bring some sort of structured content and feedback to the plate as well. But yeah, we fund it through ticket sales and sponsorship. We call it patronage. And I think we're about 2/3 full now. So I'm pretty confident we'll get 150 seats filled with some of the best brains and best people in the business. So if you would like to join us, we'll put a link in the show notes and you can grab your ticket. They are a snip at $39. So
that's great
hope to
value.
see you there.
If I do say so myself.
Yeah, I hope you bought your ticket.
I have, yeah.
Yeah, I didn't see your name.
Locked mine down day one.
Well, actually, we again, he's getting another mention, but Craig Cooper was the first person to buy a ticket in both events. So an auspicious badge, which means because he's a man of like consistency, he has to buy the first ticket moving forward. So at least we're always short of one sale, which is good.
I think that's definitely worth some Default swag sent his way as well.
I think so. Hopefully he'll be on brand. Talking of which, we need to pick that up. Yes, it's all in. There's swag coming, and we'll be doing some giveaways on future podcasts with our heavily branded. It's actually not heavily branded at all, is it?
It's very subtle. It's very subtle.
Very subtle, very dark, very mysterious.
Yeah.
And yes, we'll maybe you can wear one on your next video. Talking of which, what is the next video, and when can we expect it? Putting you on the spot.
Well, so there is there's 2 videos coming. The
A
first
brace.
one is
Wow.
yes, the first one. So I lied on the last video saying the next video was going to be about auto editing.
You did
But
say that. Already you've got off piece. This is
yeah, I'm
shocking.
off piece. But I also said that I wanted to call out any breaking changes. So the next video is a very short video, and it's simply focusing on the one breaking change in 2020-01. So that's basically just calling that out and telling developers that in 12 months time they will need to be compliant with this. The next one is after that is order editing, and that might be a two-parter, but we'll see.
Yeah, I would
I
think.
think
I think
I
at
think
least
I
a
want to
two-parter.
I want to tap out at 20 minutes in terms of video length. So yeah, if we get to a point where it's going beyond that, I'd rather cut it into a couple of parts.
Excellent, excellent. Yeah, order editing. Earlier you said meaty, and then you said beefy. I was going to ask you actually. What is the difference? Is one more?
I think I think meaty is a general term, whereas beefy means there's a bit more flavour to it.
Okay, well there you go. So
Yeah,
this is going to be beefy, correct?
yeah.
Beefy, good,
Order editing is 100% beefy. Yeah, it's
pure sirloin.
if you've got an app, I would say that there's probably a 90% chance you're impacted by order editing. So
Okay,
yeah, worth
so again, lots.
that's probably that's probably way out.
Yeah,
But anyway, I
yeah,
imagine that there are hundreds of thousands of apps impacted by this. So yeah,
yeah,
it
we'll
will
get
be
back. If someone listens, so actually it's 12.3% of apps, Kieran, or
yeah. So
something.
someone
Yeah.
from developer experience Shopify, I'm sure, will email me to say, actually, this is the
Actually,
figure.
you're entirely wrong. Just stop talking.
You're digging a hole.
Yeah, digging a hole, which we feel, I think this outro is digging a hole. So we should probably wrap up. But as
Yes.
always, thank you for listening. We've got rounding out about 45 minutes. Seems to be a good length for these sessions.
It
So
does. Yeah.
thank you for listening. Please do subscribe. It means a lot to us. Your support. We'll absolutely be bringing some interviews, as we said earlier. So if you are interested, podcast@defaulthq.com, and let us know what you'd like to talk about. And do follow us on the socials. We're getting some traction, Kieran. I think despite being around for
Nice.
many years on this social media, it feels like a whole new experience. But
We're using it for the first time, Kier.
yes, using it for the first time. I feel like a noob. But default_HQ on Twitter and Instagram. And if you would like to follow Debrief event on Twitter and Instagram as well.
Yeah.
We'll be back. And yeah, thanks for listening. Cheers.
Cheers.